Hey, how's it going, everybody? So, my name is P017 or P017, whichever you prefer to call me, and welcome to my channel. For those who are new here, basically what I do is I do a lot of reviews on CRT TVs, video monitors, and weird stuff like this. For those who are recurring, welcome back. So, this is a new acquisition that I got pretty recently, and I'm actually pretty happy to show off here today. So this TV in particular, it is a Sony Color Watchman 5-inch color CRT radio TV. So that's kind of a handful in terms of its naming, but that's basically what this is. So yeah, as the name implies, it's a 5-inch color TV that also has radio capabilities. So we're going to be going over the entire TV front to back, looking at all the different buttons, the features it has, and of course, anything else that is pretty much interesting to note. Right now, as you can see, this is also running Pocky and Rocky on the Super Nintendo, which is pretty awesome. And I'll show you how I'm able to do that on this pretty awesome little thing. But yeah, so without further ado, let's go ahead and get right into it. And for that, I'm also going to turn on 240p Test Suite. Alright, so now we got 240p Test Suite running, and we can take a good deep dive look into this thing. So we'll start at the front. Of course, it is a Sony. This is a Color Watchman, as it shows up on the top here. The model number is the FDT-5BX5, so this is a 5-inch beautiful little display. Of course, you have your radio, VHF, and UHF channels here for TV. Up here, of course, is your radio frequencies for AM and FM, because this does have AM and FM radio, with a little tuner up here and your volume knob, as well as a pretty cool carrying handle. Down here, you have your little speaker, a headphone jack, as well as channel up-down and a channel call button, which I believe searches for your channels. I didn't really mess with this because I don't actually watch TV on this thing, I just play video games. But yeah, so one interesting fact we'll go over here now, looking at this display. So this is, of course, a Sony, but this is not a Trinitron, not an aperture grill. This has a 5-inch Samsung display that is a shadow mask set, so it's a slot mask to be, well, precise. We'll actually take a look more in depth on this tube here in a little bit in terms of its image, but for now, let's go ahead and move on to the side. So here is where you'd switch between TV, FM, and AM radio, and down here is your TV band for VHF and UHF. Over on this side here, this is your little like a sticker, which shows that this thing, you can't really tell too well, but it says October 1994. So yeah, this is a mid-90s Sony TV set. This plastic, by the way, is basically the exact same plastic used in all of the Trinitron TVs of that time as well. So it is pretty biodegradable for people who know, but because this is a very, very small and lightweight set, you don't really have to worry about it falling apart on you. Unless you abuse it, in which case then yeah. Turning around to the back here, this is what you'll see. So you'll see you have your little antenna, as well as an antenna input. This is your RF input, funny enough. So this is a 3.5mm jack. You'd have to adapt a coax cable or anything like that if you were to run a antenna into this, basically to pick up any channels. Over here is your TV and video input switch, and as I mentioned before, how I get video in, this has a built-in composite port, which is freaking awesome with mono audio. So that is really, really cool, being able to have a built-in composite port, because it means I don't have to use RF. I typically don't want to use RF in anything, so this is the next best bet. Down here you have your controls for your brightness, contrast, color, and your tint. Over on this side, this is, of course, all your Sony stuff. I love that it has these big, beautiful Sony letters on it. Down here, your FDT-5BX5, that's your model number. And everything else you can see through here as best as you can. Here, let me go ahead and see if I can darken it a little bit just to show. But yeah, down there is your DC in. This does take 13.5 volts. And on the other side over here, there is nothing to note. So anyways, back to the front, or the picture display. So as I mentioned, this is running right now 240p on composite video through my Super Nintendo. And we'll go ahead and actually take a look here at a grid pattern just to show you at a close-up of how the TV looks like. So as I mentioned before, this is not a Trinitron, this is not a aperture grill TV, this is instead a slot mask. And actually, if you look at our T-Meo real close, you'll be able to see the individual phosphors. There we go, right about there. So yeah, you can get a pretty good look. This is actually a surprisingly sharp display for being only 5 inches big. I mean, being able to actually read this tiny text, while it doesn't look tiny in video, it's definitely tiny for me, is really, really cool. And the fact that it's all in color makes it even better. Now, in terms of geometry, convergence, all that sort of stuff, this does not have the absolute best geometry and convergence in the world. Convergence-wise, it's got a tiny bit of an issue right here, but for 5 inches, you're never going to notice it. Geometry-wise, I have noticed this on these Color Watchmans. I've watched a couple videos on them, as well as seen some pictures and stuff. Every single one of them seems to have bowing across the entirety of the screen on all 4 sides. I don't know if that's because the yoke is not fitted right from factory, or if it's just something else within the voltage, I guess, regulation between horizontal and vertical. But it seems like that's a pretty common thing with this set, is that it just will not have a fully uniform, I guess you could say, squared off tube all the way around. But this does actually have a couple adjustments, which is pretty neat. And like I said, we're going to actually open this up and show you the insides of this tube. So that'll be really cool. Also, fun fact, the reason why I even got this thing in general, so I had actually watched a video, funny enough, from Steve from RetroTech. If you know him, or if you don't know him, go ahead and check out his channel, where he did a comparison video between a Sony Color Watchman versus a Sony Mega Watchman, which is a black and white tube television radio set. And that kind of got my interest in these things, so that's why I bought this. And I wanted to explore a little bit more in depth in it, so we'll go ahead and open it up. Alright, so a couple things you want to note before opening this set up. There is 4 screws on the back here, as well as one here on the back side that you're going to need to worry about. So you're going to have to take off these 2 screws. This screw that's really deep in here. This screw that's behind this antenna, that's really deep in here. You have to have a really long screwdriver for that. And you also have to take off this little antenna screw. After you've taken off all of those screws, you're going to have to flip this thing over. There we go, onto its front, and there will be 3 tabs here. So you're going to have to push at least 2 of these tabs in to get the plastic to pop out, then you can push the 3rd one, and this whole back side will just lift right off. I'll go ahead and show you that right now. Alright, so I went ahead and took the case off, and like I said, it's just these 3 tabs down here, and what you're left with is this. So this is, of course, the internals of the Sony right down here. So this is your little neck board. This is, of course, your board with your inputs on it, as well as for RF. There's your little tuner / modulator back there. And this, of course, is a potentiometer-based set. There is no service manual, nothing like, or not manual, sorry, service menu or anything like that in terms of getting any adjustments made. So, the ones that are pretty notable, you, of course, have your colors. So you have red, blue up here in terms of drive, as well as your biases for red, blue, and green. Down here, this is your flyback transformer with your focus and your G2 voltage adjustments. On this side, you might not be able to see it too well, but there are 2 orange-faced potentiometers. One is really deep in there, and one is actually on the side, right there. That one that is really deep is supposedly, if I can get a focus on it, it says actually on the board, pin amp. So that will adjust your pin cushioning. However, based on adjusting it, this is not really so much pin amp as it is more like pin phase. And I can't really get it to adjust. It just doesn't want to seem to focus down there. But yeah, that pot down there that doesn't really want to focus is your kind of a mix of both pin amp and pin phase. So what will happen is if you adjust it too much, all 4 corners will flare out a lot. But then you'll also bias the bottom side to flare out a lot more than the top side. And then if you turn it down, you'll bias the top side a lot more, but everything will be squared away. So kind of sucks, not going to lie, not having individual adjustments for both, because if I could, I would be able to fix that curvature issue a lot more on the screen. That other one right here on the side is actually your horizontal size. So you can adjust that to adjust your horizontal size and get it more squared away in terms of that, which is pretty neat. Most TVs don't actually even have a horizontal size adjustment, but this tiny little 5-inch radio TV does. Of course, up on here too, you also have your convergence and your purity rings, as well as your tiny, tiny yoke, and all the way down in there. Like I said, you might not be able to see it because I'm not sure how well it'll focus, but that is your Samsung tube with the model number. So yeah, that's pretty much it. There are some other potentiometers on this side, but I believe that all has to do with the RF video output, because whenever I adjusted it, all 3 pots did not do anything. So there's that. But yeah, overall, that's pretty much all there is to it on this backside. Of course, you have all your other boards with, of course, your different little timing gears and everything like that for adjusting your radio tuning, your volume, and you can also see, of course, all your little adjustments for each and every single other part that feeds into this video board. So this is going to be your deflection side, it looks like, as well as all down underneath in here. And you can also see that one big old speaker that sits in there, as well as your power caps. But that's pretty much all to this specific TV. There's not too much else to talk about, so let's go ahead and take a look more at some images. One more thing I want to quickly show you, actually, that I just remembered. This is the Sony power supply that came with it. It is an OEM power supply, so 13.5 volts. That is, of course, at the polarity on the barrel, and it takes 1.5 amps. So if you don't have, or if you end up getting one of these, but you don't have a power plug for it, that's basically the voltage and current ratings, and this is, of course, your standard little power plug. So yeah, pretty easy to power one of these things if you do have a power brick like that. Alright, I'll go ahead and do a little bit of gameplay here just to show off the picture. And like I said, this is running off composite video on my Super Nintendo. So you might not be able to tell just because my video camera is not the greatest when it comes to the actual picture quality itself. It does actually mess around with the colors a little bit and stuff like that, but the colors are pretty dang good on this picture, which is pretty nice. So like I said, it's quite sharp. I can read this as 582 with 3 and 4 in terms of the rupees, diamonds, and arrows that I have. So yeah, it is all around pretty readable. There's been some text, depending on the game that I play, that is not readable. So like, for example, on F-Zero GX, which is 480i on my GameCube, some of the text down on the corners are not very readable. But other than that, for 240p, this thing is pretty freaking awesome. For 480i, depending on the game, you may not want to play on this TV. So for example, something like Metroid Prime, I would highly not suggest playing this on, just because it is so freaking tiny that you're not going to be able to see your surroundings with such a small FOV, which Metroid Prime already has quite a small FOV. So, like I said, this is more recommended for 2D games and stuff like that, but you definitely can play 3D games on this thing. It would actually be really funny if you decided to play Smash Bros. Melee on it, just to see if you can get 2 people to play competitively on something as small as this. So yeah, overall, like I said, this is a really nice little Sony. It is not a Trinitron, but it is a still really nice picture tube. I actually love Samsung picture tubes quite a lot, so finding that out was actually pretty incredible to me whenever I bought this thing. But overall, that's pretty much all I got, so go ahead and enjoy this gameplay while I say thank you so much, guys, for watching this little video on this beautiful little Sony Color Watchman. So if you do find one for yourself, like I said, these are pretty cute little TVs you can play on. I have this one set up on my desk. So yeah, if you do find one, well, now you know the adjustments, and now you know how the picture looks like on it, hopefully, as long as it's working good. So yeah, other than that, thank you so much, and I will see you in the next video.